After the defeat at Abu Talal, the Turks or the Germans never again went on the offensive. As summer came to a close, it was no secret to either side that Allenby was planning an offensive, but in true Allenby style, he was not going to reveal where it would occur. It was pretty obvious though that there were only two options: one, to break out up the Jordan Valley, or two, to launch north from Jaffa on the coast. Either way, the objective was the same: to take Damascus. So from June through to September, he made every day count to prepare and reorganise his divisions. During this time, many of the experienced British troops had to return to fight in France, so his replacements were largely untested troops. There were many Indian plus some French cavalry and 2 Jewish battalions who'd been raised in England. It was also during this time that the Australians in the Camel Corps jumped off their camels and jumped onto horses to become the 14th and 15th Regiments of the Light Horse. So as the deadline came closer, Allenby set to bluffing the Turks once again by a series of well-staged ruses, including 15,000 dummy horses and daily marching battalions in and out of the Jordan Valley. He convinced the German leaders that the offensive was going to fall in the east. And so while all this was going on in the Jordan Valley, over here in Tel Aviv, everything was being prepared for the great big push north. On the September the 19th, 1918, all the armies made a great move north from this very point. And while all this preparation was going on, other things were happening way over the other side in Jordan. By now, with the hidden help of Lawrence of Arabia and other British leaders, the Arabs were starting to create quite a bit of trouble for the Turkish Fourth Army around Amman. Lawrence had met with Allenby, and under the Commander-in-Chief's orders he was told to push north along the railway and destroy it as much as he could to cut off the only route north for retreating Turks. Now, if you've ever seen that masterpiece movie Lawrence of Arabia, you get a bit of an idea of what was going on at this point. Lawrence and his Arabs were desperately pushing north to reach Damascus first and politically claim leadership of the town before any of the Allied forces got there. We'll talk more about that when we get to Damascus in a few days' time. But for now, let's focus our attention on one of history's greatest military exploits, the Battle of Megiddo. It's not very often that battles actually go the way they're planned, but in the case of the next few days, that's exactly what happened. The whole Allied force, with meticulous timing and execution, smashed through the demoralised Turkish 7th and 8th armies and sent them into a disorganised retreat. The Australians were not used as the spearhead of the initial drive up through this pass onto the plain of Jezreel, but they were quick to take advantage of the situation once they were given the chance. So the history books were being written. Now this battle has been called a number of different names. In some books you'll read it's called the Great Ride, because it was just history and cavalry, how they came through here so fast, this whole cavalry action of cutting off the Turkish army. But other books will call it the Battle of Armageddon. The reason for that is where I am standing right now is in front of Megiddo. This mound behind me is the famous biblical place of Megiddo, and this is the plain of Armageddon. Prophecies in the Bible say this is where it's all going to end. Now, it wasn't necessarily the end of the world in September 1918, but it certainly was the end of the German and Turkish armies here. They'd come up right through Samaria is where the Australians came, and by now the Turkish army were in ruin. General Saval made his headquarters here. I think a rumour has it that it was right here the decision was made after the success of the sweep to here. It's time to keep going through to Damascus. From the famous Mount Carmel you get an excellent view of the plain of Jezreel and all the surrounding mountains. In good weather you can see the hills of Samaria levelling out into the plain, the valley towards the Jordan, and even Mount Tabor in the distance. Over the next few days, the British and Indian cavalry came onto the plain and went straight away north to take Haifa and Nazareth, while the light horse worked through Samaria to clean up the retreating enemy. I've mentioned before that no matter where you go in this place, you're standing on history. I'm just above the plain of Jezreel now. If I look in that direction, I can see Mount Carmel. This, of course, is where Elijah had the great big competition, I guess you could say, the religious, spiritual competition. Him and the prophets of Baal, and of course, he won, or God won. 400 prophets of Baal destroyed here. And right in this direction, not far at all, you can see Mount Gilboa. Just underneath there is where Gideon defeated the Midianites. But guess what? We have a bit of Australian history here as well. Directly behind me is down into Samaria, and right in the distance underneath the rain clouds is the city of Jenin. Well, the 5th Brigade guys, while they were cleaning up all the mess, they knew that the Turkish army and Germans were trying to make their way out through this pass through to the Jordan to escape. They were sent down, and a small group on one night of just 23 Australians were going down beyond this city into the hills. They came across 2,000 German and Turkish troops, and they were being led by German officers. I think I understand, if I've got it right, there was an English-speaking German nurse with them. Smart thinking Australians, they went ahead and they said, we've got you surrounded by machine guns, one great big bluff. 2,000 of the enemy surrendered to 23 Australians. Now the word in the history, it's ticklish. They spent a very ticklish night once the Germans and Turks had put their weapons down, of course, and realised they'd been bluffed by 23 Australians. They weren't happy, but the war was over for them, just like the prophets of Baal and the Midianites.